Welcome to the Explainer. So let's just dive right in and unpack the fascinating and honestly pretty wild evolution of Cardano's on-chain governance system. It's actually been over a year now since they launched this massive, real-world application of decentralized power. And you know what? The insights we're getting from the community are absolutely incredible. I mean, we're looking at data that could literally map the future of all decentralized finance.
Which brings us to a really massive question. What actually happens when you give thousands of everyday people the keys to a global blockchain? It's a grand governance experiment, the likes of which we've rarely seen in human history, shifting the power directly back to the token holders. We're talking about a globally transparent ledger where people from every single corner of the world, from Miami to Japan, Brazil, Austria, they're all actively participating in deciding exactly how to govern a digital nation.
And here's the really cool part about how this works. Owning Cardano's native token, ADA, actually gives you a voice. You do this through Delegated Representatives, or as they call them, DReps. So you're not just passively holding an asset anymore, you're actively participating in a massive system of checks and balances. Now, of course, if you don't want to vote on every single little thing yourself, because who has the time, right? You can simply delegate your ADA to a DRep who aligns with your personal vision.
Just to give you a sense of the sheer scale we're talking about here, there are currently about 550 active DReps operating on the network. Out of over 1,000 that registered, these 550 are the ones right in the trenches, actively participating, evaluating proposals, and literally shaping the future of the entire ecosystem. It's essentially a massive, globally distributed human workforce. All right, moving into Section 1, let's look at what's working so far, specifically a year without exploits. We're going to start with the triumphs of the past year. Because, let's be real, in the wild west of blockchain, just staying safe is a massive, massive achievement. So, here is the crucial takeaway. While we see other chains suffering these massive hacks where hundreds of millions of dollars just vanish overnight, Cardano has survived its entire first year of governance without a single major security exploit. We're talking zero malicious treasury withdrawals, absolutely none. That's a huge testament to the robust security layer they've baked right into the governance structure itself. And you can really feel the momentum building. They've established an official constitution to guide decision-making, and they've already had over 110 governance actions submitted and reviewed. Plus, ADA owners aren't just sitting on the sidelines. Participation is hovering around 16%, and the active DRep voting stake is just steadily climbing. It's creating this really solid foundation of engaged voters who are totally committed to the long-term health of the chain.
Okay, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows. That brings us to Section 2, the voting power problem and centralization threats. Because any system built by humans is bound to have a few cracks in the foundation, right? Let's take a look at one of the most pressing challenges they're currently facing.
We're seeing this thing that a lot of folks in the community are calling the popularity contest effect. Basically, power is naturally clumping together around founding entities and big-name influencers rather than, being evenly spread out based on actual governance expertise. And hey, it makes total sense. People naturally want to delegate to names they recognize. But it creates a pretty serious bottleneck, where just a handful of massive DReps end up holding way too much influence over the treasury.
And this really highlights the glaring gap we're talking about. Look at the network security layer. It's highly decentralized. It would take 59 different entities to compromise it, which is a metric known as its Nakamoto coefficient. But then you look at the governance layer, and it relies on a much, much smaller group. To put it in perspective, it only takes about 35 DReps to block or pass major treasury actions. And get this, just around 20 DReps can initiate a protocol hard fork, which is basically a major software upgrade. So yeah, that's a critical imbalance, and it's something the community is super eager to fix.
Which leads us right into Section 3, the burden of DReps and the human cost. You see, decentralization isn't just some abstract technical metric. There's a very real, very heavy human toll on the people actually running the system. And honestly, we often completely forget the human element when we talk about blockchain.
Just picture this for a second. Imagine having to sit down, read, fully understand, and then vote on highly technical 50-plus page service plan documents. Oh, and by the way, you have to do that for over 100 different proposals. It's a completely unrealistic burden for any one person. But incredibly, this is exactly what active DReps are dealing with every single day right now.
The expectations are they're wild. DReps are somehow expected to be experts in literally everything. Software engineering, global marketing campaigns, complex legal frameworks, you name it.
They're trying to sift through overlapping budgets and complicated key performance indicators, or KPIs, and as you might guess, that creates a massive bottleneck for scalability. I mean, no single human being can magically scale their expertise across every single domain of an entire global digital economy. It's just not possible.
And you really have to listen to the sheer emotional weight of this quote from Hicks out of the Japanese community. Think about it. Voting against a proposal often means you are personally crushing someone's livelihood or their absolute dream project. And because all this voting is completely transparent on-chain for everyone to see, voting no frequently triggers some fiercely toxic community backlash and even personal attacks on social media. That kind of pressure alone makes the job incredibly draining for these folks.
So, Section 4, Proposals for a Better Future and the Transformation Ahead. Obviously, we can't just leave the system the way it is. How on earth do we fix this creeping centralization and all this horrible DRep burnout? Well, let's dive into some of the really clever solutions that the builders and voters are coming up with. The community has been brainstorming some truly brilliant ledger-level and interface-level fixes to basically force better voting power distribution and just make the whole process of delegating a lot easier. They're talking about things like annual delegation resets. This would force ADA holders to actually wake up and actively re-choose their DReps every year, rather than just doing the whole set-it-and-forget-it routine. This is absolutely vital because it prevents what we call dead voting power from just piling up with inactive reps. It keeps the whole system fresh and dynamic. They're also looking hard at upgrading the wallet interfaces. Let's be honest, right now, if the voting tools are buried or hard to find, people simply aren't going to use them.
Now, to stop that DRep burnout we talked about, experts are proposing something called coordination layers. Think of these as specialized government agencies that execute very specific tasks. So instead of having every single DRep stress out voting on some highly technical smart contract update they might not even understand, that budget just goes directly to a builder DAO. That's essentially a decentralized working group of actual software engineers, the people who actually understand the code.
As you'll see, this builds a much more sustainable system. Here's how it flows. Step 1. The DReps set the big picture budget. They look at the landscape and say, okay, let's allocate 20% to marketing and maybe 40% to developers. Step 2. Those specialized domain experts in the coordination layer step in and handle all the gritty details of exactly who gets what chunk of the money. And then step 3, the funded projects are tracked against strict 2030 key performance indicators. And this whole concept is summed up just beautifully by Logan from Miami. He points out that funding isn't just handing out a blank check. No way. It's the beginning of a performance-tracked relationship. Once a proposal actually passes, that is definitely not the end of the story. The community has to step up and ensure those funds are actually generating the growth they promise for the ecosystem. Accountability is the name of the game here.
Which brings us to the ultimate question. As this massive experiment continues to evolve, this is the one thing that's going to define the entire future of Web3 governance. Can decentralized governance actually scale without completely breaking the people who are trying to run it? We are definitely seeing the growing pains right now, for sure. But at the same time, we're witnessing some truly incredible innovation in how human beings can organize, distribute power, and literally manage billions of dollars entirely on-chain. It's wild. So I'm going to leave you with this to ponder. What mechanisms would you build to ensure power actually stays with the people without totally overwhelming them in the process? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning and stay curious.